Hi, I'm Keith Allen, and I play Murphy on Z Nation, and I listen to One Up Gaming Podcast.
It's the One Up Gaming Podcast, hosted by David, Sean, and Zach.
Hey guys, Justin here. I wanted to take a minute to talk to you about this thing we're really getting into here at One Up Gaming. It's called the Eagle Box, and it's a tiny Android console that, with a high-quality wireless controller, connects to your TV via HDMI, and then it gives you instant access to all kinds of retro games. It comes pre-installed with Android TV and the movie apps and all the fun stuff like Kodi that you would expect from an Android box. But in addition to that, I mean, this is like me going off and saying, but wait, there's more! It can play PS1, MAME, Dreamcast, N64, Neo Geo, Atari, NES, SNES, Game Boy, Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance, Sega Master System, Sega Mega Drive, or, Sega Genesis back in the real world, what do you want to call it? Commodore 64, Amiga, ZX Spectrum, I could go on for days with the amount of games that this thing can play. And if, by chance, you happen to run out of memory, it has an expandable memory slot too, so you can keep adding on to your game library if that's your thing. Unlike a lot of these other Android-based consoles out there, it supports up to 1080p. It includes a TV remote, and I can't speak highly enough about this thing. It does everything you'd want it to, and it's a media device too. So if you're into quality retro gaming, and I know Nintendo has this, NES Classic console coming out in November, and it's going to be $60 US or whatever. But you can start now. I mean, you could play these games on your TV right now, rather than having to wait, and probably not even be able to get a unit, one of those NES Classic consoles due to, sheer nostalgic demand. I mean, the pre-orders are going to be crazy. Why go through that when you can get an Eagle Box from One Up Gaming right now and start playing those classic games right now? And then, when you're done playing games, you could watch movies and do a host of other things, media-related, all in one device. It comes with a wireless controller. It comes with a TV remote. And you record live TV if you want. I mean, this is one of these things it does. It's a full media device. It can record virtually anything you want to do on Android, you can do on here, because it is a full Android device. And for those of you familiar with Kodi, it comes with that pre-installed. So, go to One Up Gaming, go to our website, okay? Check it out, and get yourself an Eagle Box. Don't bother going to eBay. Who knows what's going to be there. You never know what you're getting out of eBay. I mean, how many times have I been burned? I can't even count the times that I've been burned through eBay. But know that you're getting a quality device through One Up Gaming that's going to do all your retro games, and some fairly modern ones too, and all your media stuff too, right in your living room, right now. No need to wait. So, go to the One Up Gaming website, check it out, and I think you'll like it. Anyway, back to the show.
And welcome to One Up Gaming, episode 166, I believe it is. Now, unfortunately, I couldn't manage to cobble together people for a normal podcast, and you don't want to hear my monotonous, drony voice for an hour talking to myself. So I've just grabbed two of our interviews that we did for our other podcast, OUG Talks. So I talked to Roll 7 about their games, and I'm thinking that we'll also have a quick chat with Drinkbox Studios. So, thank you all, and hope you enjoyed these interviews. See you next week. Up next on the show, we got a treat for you. Here is this week's interview. And we're back. It's One Up Gaming. It's the OUG Talks. It's me, David, and we've got a special guest. So, I guess, please introduce yourself and just say what you do.
Absolutely, yes. My name is Simon Bennett. I'm the studio director at Roll 7. And at the moment I do eating muesli and waiting for coffee. But we also make games.
That's it. That coffee sounds good.
So this has been recorded super early in David's So he was desperate to get back to bed. So
Problems that I have is because a lot of the team that I work with for the podcast are either in New Zealand or in America. So we have to record like 11 o'clock at night. So I'm dead tired then when I'm recording the normal podcast. And then when I'm recording interviews, it's normally in the morning when I've just finished work and I'm exhausted. So it doesn't matter what time of day it is, I'm just tired all the time.
Oh, that sucks. That sucks.
It does. I need to get off night shift. It's a killer.
It must be.
So, what is your role at Roll 7?
My role at Roll 7, I am... Okay, I actually had to explain this yesterday, so I've succinctified it somewhat. I'm a product director, I'm a marketing director, and I'm a commercial director, which essentially means I make sure that we get to make games. I make sure that we can continue to eat food by having people hear about games, and ensure that that food can be upgraded from maybe a value pack of ham to a standard pack of ham by commercialising those games a bit further on other platforms.
So what he's saying is, without you, Roll 7 would no longer be around.
Not necessarily. I just think we'd be eating different types of ham. I think no. I mean, we're all three of us, three directors. There's Tom and John. Tom's our sort of kind of production director and finance. He's also involved in that piece, and John's also involved in the creative side of how we, keep commercially viable. But a lot of the actual day-to-day grunt work of getting that stuff over the line does fall to me, which is probably quite a worrying thought for most people because I'm mostly incompetent.
Sounds great. So, mate, we were chatting a little bit off air, and you basically said that you used to have a office where you all went into to work, but now you're all remote. Has that changed the dynamic of the team, or is it still sort of like a core fun sort of team? Or
it's an interesting one. We've had sort of Roll 7 began in 2008 as a sister company to a bigger training company that we ran, and it was mostly doing sort of prototype projects and R&D and lots of fun stuff. And then we signed, after doing a lot of kind of boring work for clients and marketing projects, websites, videos, films, interactive digital pieces, and so forth, and a lot of games. We signed Ollie Ollie in 2012, and sort of since that we've been 100% focused on games, and each game we've had sort of a different team brought on for. But we finished Ollie Ollie, and we realised that John had done far more work on Ollie Ollie at home, just because he'd had the headspace to focus on the levels. So when it came to making Not a Hero, John said that he wanted to do it at home, just because it saved him 2 hours of travel every day, and that if he wanted, he could work till 1 in the morning on the game, which did end up being the case on a number of occasions. So we built Ollie Ollie in the Ollie Ollie 2 in the studio in Deptford, where we were based. And at the end of that project, we said, why don't we try and do this remote thing? We were planning on having a break anyway. The office had become quite a dingy and sort of stanky setup. It wasn't anywhere that anyone would necessarily want to be, and it was in sort of quite a grimy area of Deptford as well. So there's not much of an aspirational element to sort of coming to the office. We just got rid of it all and ran operations remotely since then. And we've literally just signed our new game, which we can't really talk about too much. But as a result of having a fully remote team, it means that we can bring people on from all over the UK and in fact further afield. So We've now got people working for us from from Birmingham, from Leamington Spa, from Guildford, from Rugby. We've just signed someone up from Hungary, and it just means that instead of being limited to the people that might be prepared to travel to get to South East London, we can employ anyone in the UK and in fact anyone in Europe, as long as they're on relatively the same sort of time scale as us. So yeah, it's cool. The dynamics not really. I wouldn't say the dynamics changed a massive amount. We always spoke a lot on the phone anyway. We meet up in London sort of 2 or 3 times a month. And we spend a bit more time with each other than we normally would. We go out for lunch, we go out for dinner, we soak up each other's company, but that's really all we want to see of each other. We've worked together now, some of us anyway. Tom and I have been working together since about 1995. John and us have been working together since 2006. We all know each other well enough to not have to see each other's ugly faces, I think.
So out of the 3 games that you guys have released, which has been your favourite and why?
Oh, it's such a tough one. I think, okay, so my favourite to play, like as a sort of core loop of fun, is Ollie Ollie 2. Just because it's got a lot of that one more, one more go, one more try thing. Ollie Ollie was a nightmare to make. It was the first game that we made kind of properly, commercially, and none of us really knew what we were doing, and as a result, we all nearly died in the process. And Ollie Ollie 2 had an element of that. Not a Hero also had a lot of that, but it was so much more fun to make. John and I, John, the creative director, and I worked on that directly, and it was the first time that I think we properly found our kind of working flow on how we do things. Like how we criticize each other and how we feed back in a way that, is going to work. And actually, like the process of doing all of the voices for the game, coming up with all of the gags and the sort of fun and the nonsense. It was a lot of fun. I think it was just a lot of passion from this very small team that was working on it. And the end result is, it's just, it's great. And it's great to see on, forums and on Twitter or Facebook, people really getting into the whole Vote Bunny Lord thing and enjoying all of the nuances of the different characters. It's a very British game. It's something that we really wanted to, that we really, once we got our teeth into that theme of Britishness, that we really wanted to show off to the world. It's not often that games, they tend to be based in the States or somewhere. So it was nice to do something, inherently British.
I mean, to me, the games, they remind me of something that some developers would be making on the old, Amiga 1200.
Absolutely. We've not moved on. I think it was really, the limitations of the budgets that we had for the projects really set and defined the kind of the artistic limitations, and we set those boundaries. We didn't go 3D, and we kept them relatively simple. But in a way, that's been great, because it means that you're just set to a particular style. As soon as you open up the can of 3D Worms, not the game 3D Worms, but just the can of 3D, that is really where you start realising that you need a whole load more people in order to achieve something that maybe was once achievable by one person. So,
yeah, I think 3D Worms was not the best example of the Worms franchise.
I'm not going to speak any ill of our friends at Team 17 because they have very nicely just published and funded the Not a Hero Super Snazzy edition for Xbox One and the Ollie Ollie 2 XL edition for Xbox One, which is an awesome marketing segue, I think you'll agree.
So what's been the difference with working with Team 17?
I think they really get indies, and they understand the limitations of a team that's as small as us. I think, obviously, having once been, that small. Debbie's great. She'll fight your corner. And and she understands, exactly where we're coming from. That's Debbie Beswick, who runs Team 17. No, I think that they're a really great team, and it's amazing to go up and see their studio in Wakefield. They've actually, they're not an indie, but in the standards that we'd all see an indie. We kind of think of an indie as 4 or 5 guys, maybe working remote or from a tiny little room somewhere making a game. But there's like 60 or 70 people all in this big office, and they're all know what they're doing, and they've got a receptionist and stuff. So it was quite cool. But yeah, no, they're really good guys.
Yeah, I mean, from the things I've heard, I think they've shifted more from being like an indie developer and going more into the publishing sort of side.
Absolutely. I think they've, and that's been something that's really worked for them. I think because they've got such a great team there with all of that experience across different platforms. That's really what you need, and that's what they're delivering on. So I think that transition for them has been really, really successful, and they've still been able to work on their own IP as well. So it's nice. It's a nice mix.
Yeah, 'cause I mean, I know Worms originally came out roughly about 91 on the Amiga.
Right.
And I mean, how many versions of Worms must there have been?
I'm just going to hazard a guess at 150. I don't know. I mean, it is the franchise that never stops giving. It's fantastic.
I mean, did they do Hogs of War, or was that just something very similar?
I'm not sure. I'll be honest. I'm not sure.
'Cause in my head, that was the early sort of concept for the Worms 3D.
Right. Okay. I'm sure that the internet will tell us that. Yeah, it's just really interesting to pick their brains about sort of how you do stuff. One of the things that was quite interesting was the whole around what we named them. Calling it a Super Snazzy edition and giving the DLC or the sort of extra content for Not a Hero name, which is me, myself, and Bunny Lord. Actually getting Debbie's input on that, and being quite candid. She's like, we've had a game called Worms, and the rest of the job on that is just coming up with new names in order to sort of try and build hype and sell it, to either the same people or build a new audience with it. So that naming process was really fun, actually. It was. You can definitely see how they've managed to stay in business so long. Very astute business choices and thinking around how you actually how you kind of market a game and maybe sort of repackage it for a different segment.
So I guess moving on to the newest versions of your games on the Xbox One. From what I could gather, Microsoft used to be very strict about if you are going to release a game that's already been released elsewhere, that you have to include a lot of added extras.
Yes.
Was that a bit of a pain?
It's an interesting one. With Ollie Ollie 1, we managed to get around that because we'd already agreed to do that, or we'd inquired about doing an Xbox One port before they brought that parity law in, or a parity clause in, not law. And that was good. They supported us through that, and we worked with Curve to get that on Xbox One. But when it came to this, the only way to do it was to get, to develop new content. So the thinking that we had was, after we finished Ollie Ollie 2 and Not a Hero, we'll have a break and then we'll come back and we'll do some extra content for those games because we can, and because it would be less stressful than starting an entire new project. So we basically had to determine how much content we think we could realistically do within a certain time frame, and that time frame ended up being about 4 months. And then getting Xbox to actually agree that was a sufficient amount to justify getting the games to their platform, which they did. I actually think it's genuinely it's quite a serious chunk more. So, Not a Hero's 21 levels with 3 bonus levels in its original format, and we made another 3 levels with totally new and sort of different kind of assets and backgrounds and stuff like that, where you actually get to play as Bunny Lord himself in 3 sort of unique missions. So he's made a series of space-time continuum errors in his marauding around, and the other Bunny Lord from the future, who you do get to meet at the end of the game, and in this added content, has come back to tell him that he's made these mistakes, and unless he changes them, the future's going to be a mess. Bit Back to the Future-y. There's some Terminator elements in there as well. We've borrowed a lot from the world of movies, but abstracted it enough to not be in any kind of legal problems. So those are really fun levels, and they're kind of pegged at sort of at the mid difficulty level, so everyone should have quite a bit of fun with them. And then on Ollie Ollie XL Edition, we've added a whole new mode to the game, 5 new levels called Free Skate, and we've removed the requirement to actually press A to land, so you can actually just chill and ride and kind of learn some of the tricks without the kind of constant pressure of having to land or you'll bail. So yeah, that in itself is really cool as well. And that was developed by Sam, who's our head of QA, one of the best people at Ollie Ollie in the world. And he basically spent 4 or 5 months solidly building levels that he just thought would be really fun to skate. So he absolutely loved that, as did we, because it was a delight to actually play them. There's no real challenge in them, and it's what the community have been asking for, something fun that didn't tax. So yeah, that's the new content for Xbox One.
When the original Ollie Ollie sort of came out, I heard great things about it, but unfortunately, at the time, I didn't have a PlayStation sort of Sony console. I didn't have a handheld, and I don't really play games on the PC. Whenever I turn the PC on, it's either to do editing, to upload things to the website, things like that. So unfortunately, the last few years, I've not really had a good chance to try the Ollie Ollie sort of stuff.
Oh, no.
I have actually now got it on the Xbox One.
Aha!
And it's different to from what everyone was going. Everyone was saying it's the new Tony Hawk's, but it's nothing like Tony Hawk's. I mean, to me, it's in style. It's very similar to an endless runner, sort of where it's just constantly going left to right, and you have to do the tricks and the buttons. And I can actually see it could get very addictive very quickly.
Yeah, that was sort of the thinking. I mean, the game itself is fundamentally a very simple game. You flick the left stick to do a trick, and you press A or X depending on what console you're on to land. And there's a series of other buttons there to do grinds or different types of tricks. But ultimately, it's a game about rhythm and timing and quite quick slams and immediate resets. It's a very much a sort of twitch. It's a twitch game. It doesn't really give you that much room for failure.
Yeah, so it's good that you've actually said that, because I've actually just reviewed the Ollie Ollie 2 for the Xbox One. And I did actually say it reminds me of as I said, a endless runner, sort of that sort of graphical style going left to right, but it's very Twitch based.
Yeah.
With the controls, and I sort of said that, in my opinion, I don't think it would work on a mobile, a touchscreen device. I think, although it looks very simple, you'd need a physical 3D stick and buttons to actually get the best out of that game.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was prototyped originally on mobile, and I think maybe a stripped down version where you don't have to do, such acrobatic fingering in order to do tricks might be possible. But you're totally right. I think people look at it and think it looks simple, but actually the control scheme and the way that it plays is so controller centric, and that's really what John wanted to achieve. Something that felt like skateboarding. The way that you flick the left stick, the idea around that anyway that's sort of your feet on the board, and the point at which you flick those is the point at which you launch your trick. And really, the addition that we've added to the game that no other skate game's really done, and the thing that we were sort of praised for, was having to press A or X to land. And I guess that's the big thing with skateboarding is really hard, and a lot of skateboarding games miss that fact. And you just do a trick and he lands it and it's fine. But actually, if you watch a bunch of guys skating at a skate park, they will practice a trick again, and they'll probably do the rotation of the board in the air, or they'll do whatever's required of the trick. But it's the actual landing bit that is so hard to nail, because it's, it invariably involves catching the board back on the way down from a trick and rolling away from it. And that's what we wanted to sort of, and that all comes down to timing. And so that's what we sort of wanted to recreate with that whole landing mechanic. So yeah, I don't know. Do you score games or do you just write about them?
We sort of have a 5-star rating.
Should I know?
It got 4 out of 5.
Woohoo! Awesome. That's fantastic.
And someone else reviewed the Not a Hero Super Snazzy Edition, or whatever I think it was called that.
Yeah.
And I think they gave that 4 out of 5 as well.
Awesome. That is solid. Solid 8.
So, I mean, from what my other person was saying on the team, Not a Hero was, although it looked, I mean, I'll be honest, I'd not really heard of the game. I just saw some quick screenshots and I thought, ooh. But the way he was going on about the game being one of the best games of last year, I was actually quite shocked. But I mean, will you be carrying that sort of art style forward, where technically it looks quite simple and minimal, but it's so smooth?
Well, firstly, yeah, thanks to your friend there who's suggested that it was one of the best games from last year. The answer to that question is actually no. We're not going to be continuing on in that vein. Our next game, people won't think that it's a Roll7 game. From what they see of it, they're going to think that it's developed by a whole different team and that it's a whole different art style. I guess the thing that's the core of Roll7 games is that they are quite easy to pick up and play, but to get really good at them and master them takes a lot of thinking and skill, and there's a depth there. So I think the gameplay style of our next game is very much a Roll7 game. However, the art style is definitely moving away from that kind of retro 2D look, and that primarily that comes back to the ambition that John wants for the next game. We want to do something really quite that stretches what we've done before. And whereas before we've been working on 2 projects at once, Ollie Ollie 2 and Not a Hero, at the same time, now all of the team are combining efforts and joining forces to create something a bit bigger. So yeah, the next thing's going to be different.
So is that a hint that it's maybe going to be like a 3D game?
Oh, I couldn't possibly say, but maybe.
Or in the very least, like a 2.5D or whatever.
Well, we did 2.25D with isoslant technology in Not a Hero. I think it's fair to say that we're moving towards the extra 0.75D that we didn't have before.
I don't know how old you are, but for me, the pinnacle of gaming was, let's just say, one of my favourite games was Final Fight.
Oh.
But there hasn't really been what I would call a good side-scrolling beat-em-up for maybe 20 years.
Yeah.
I mean, would it be something that you guys would be interested in, to try to add a bit of your comical flair into that sort of genre?
I don't know. I do know that Mother Russia Bleeds is an attempt by a French team. It's a new Devolver game that's a sort of side-scrolling beat-em-up style game, super violent and gory, that's coming out. I don't think that's necessarily on the list from us. No, I don't. Sort of, it's quite odd actually. John, the ideas that John comes up with tend not to get too many in the same vein. So the next game isn't funny at all. It isn't any. There's no humour in it at all. It's incredibly serious, and it's not based on anything that exists in the world currently. It's very much a projection into something else. So there's no current plans for a Roll7 comedy side-scrolling beat-em-up using a bunny, but there probably should be. That would be awesome. Bunny Lord's Rampage.
And then you could also have a sort of cameo of your skateboard dude in it, where he's like skateboarding around and he stands up and like uses his board as a weapon.
Absolutely. There you go. I'm up for that. That sounds like fun.
I'm sure you can get a couple of people to knock it out in a few months.
Yeah, exactly. Games are easy, right?
Yeah.
I think that was the one thing that we were so naive about right at the start is we used to make games in a month when we were doing them for clients, and we would just sort of smash them out, and we'd have a team just make really hooky code to do what we wanted. And when we got to Ollie Ollie, we're like, wow, we've got a whole 9 months to make a game. This is crazy. We've got so long. We're going to be able to do loads of stuff. And I think that misconception that games can be made quite easily, they're tough beasts, really tough beasts. That's all I can say. So there might not be a side-scrolling 2-month made Bunny Lord / Ollie Ollie beat 'em up. But if you know some people who want to make one, we'll provide them with the assets. That would be quite fun.
I don't know. I mean, I just think that genre, unfortunately, is gone now.
Yeah?
You don't really see anyone trying it anymore.
No.
Or the ones that do sort of come out, the sort of like really bad 3D animated and just bad games. So when you guys were, when you were involved in doing some like the contract sort of work with other people where you just made what you would, cheap, fast sort of games.
Yeah.
What would you say is maybe one of the worst games that you made for them?
I'd say the worst game that we made was a clone of Doodle Jump called Job Jump, and it was for a college that wanted to. It's a college that wanted to talk about different professions, like to sell different courses, vocational courses, and they had chef course, they had a business administration course, they had a hairdressing course, and we basically recreated Doodle Jump, but instead of being a little doodle man, you were one of these characters. So you're either a hairdresser or a chef, and you were just bouncing up this thing and collecting skills and money. It was just terrible. I can't imagine anyone would have ever played it. I think it was in the naissance of people thinking that they could use video games to market things, including us. We thought it was a great tool, and if it wasn't for that sort of work, we wouldn't still be here. So we can't dismiss it too rapidly, and it helped us understand how to make games as well. So it was a great little learning pad for us. So.
Yeah, I mean, every little thing you did, you'll have taken some sort of skill away from it.
Absolutely, like hairdressing in that case.
So, I will say thank you, Simon. I've actually woken up now, about an hour too late. If you want to just sort of say how people can get hold of any of the versions of the games.
Absolutely. Here comes my marketing spiel. So yeah, Ollie Ollie 2 XL edition with the extra freescape mode is available on Xbox One now, all over the world. And Not a Hero Super Snazzy edition with the Me, Myself and Bunny Lord update. Again, available on Xbox One right now, all on the online store. There is actually a double pack of both of those games called the Bunny Lord Pro Hater Pack, which I think everyone will like. You can get both of those games at a massive discount. So yeah, do please support your tiny independent studios and go and buy their games on every single platform under the sun.
I mean, I might be wrong, but is there a physical release coming as well?
There is indeed. We've partnered with a team called Badlands in Spain, and Oli Oli 2 and Oli Oli 1 have been bundled together with exclusive video content and a manual, an exclusive studio booklet with interviews from the studio, and the soundtrack, and also a PS Vita code as well for stores around the UK. So you should be able to see the Oli Oli Epic Combo Edition in stores from July. Again, that will be international release. So really exciting to actually get a proper disc in a shop. Yeah, so that's coming out in July.
So I will say thank you, and throughout the whole time we were talking, I was just trying not to say Gordon Bennett.
Well, you got it in there. You got it in. Nice.
And I've actually wrote it in my notebook. You know, that's how...
Do not say it.
So, Simon, thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I wish you and Roll 7 all the best in the future.
Thanks so much, David. And yeah, thanks so much to One Up Gaming for all your support. You guys rock.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Cheers, Steve.
See ya.
And coming up next on One Up Gaming, this week's interview.
Hello, this is David Schroeder of Dino Eggs and the new Dino Eggs Rebirth. Congratulations on your 150th podcast. Watch out for Dino Mom!
And we're here with One Up Gaming. Not sure what episode it is. Lose track of time. I know with our main podcast, we're recording our 150th podcast tonight.
Wow.
That should be fun. Like 34 hours without any sleep. Yeah, that's going to be really fun. But anyway, this is, I guess, if you just want to just take it away and just sort of say who you guys are and what do you do.
Yeah, sure. So we're Drinkbox Studios, and I'm Chris. I do designy stuff and talking about the game stuff, and beside me I have Graham.
Yeah, I'm Graham, and I'm one of the founders of Drinkbox, and I was a producer on Severed.
And I must say, you don't sound that American.
We're not American.
That's probably why we don't sound American. We're based in Toronto, Canada, although... I'll be honest, I don't think there's much of a sounding difference between Canadians and Americans.
We're like Little America.
Yeah, we're America's hat.
Yeah.
Yeah, the only thing I know about Canada is South Park takes the mick out of them.
Is what, sorry?
South Park, they take the mick, you know, they take the piss out of them.
Oh, yeah.
South Park, yeah.
That's true.
But we like to laugh at ourselves, so we take it all in good humor.
Sure.
So, is that correct? Do Canadians have, like, wobble jaws?
Yeah, well, the top of our heads are not connected to the bottom of our heads.
And our eyes are incredibly tiny.
And we like to fart. And we say boot.
We say boot a lot. And roof.
I have to say, when I think it must have come out when I was about 15, the movie. And...
Oh, yeah.
When they were singing the Uncle Fucker song?
Yeah.
I was just in stitches. It was so good.
Oh, that movie was... the portrait of Canada in that movie is fantastic.
Yeah.
It's really funny.
I think the soundtrack should have won an Oscar.
Oh, yeah. And they were singing Blame Canada on the stage at the Oscars.
Right.
That was really good.
Anyway, I think we should maybe move on to what we're here to talk about. So if you just want to tell us about your game, Severed?
Sure. So Severed is coming out for the PS Vita this Tuesday, so that's April 26th worldwide. It is a first-person dungeon crawler that utilizes touch gestures for combat. So you're going to run into a lot of monsters while exploring this world, and every monster will have a unique set of attack patterns, and you need to figure out what those patterns are, and you'll often have to parry monsters at specific times, which will result in them being vulnerable, so you then counterattack. The game also has RPG elements to it, and it's based in a pretty neat, surrealistic-looking world, so the art style is very bright and pretty unique, I'd say.
I mean, I will say it's a bit of a departure from the last game. Is it Guacamelee?
Yes.
Yeah, it's a complete departure from the last game. We basically were looking to do something new, to change our gears on the creative juices.
And I mean, I don't know if you guys are aware, but in America, there's a lot of people that love the so-called Metroidvania sort of games. But over in the little old UK, Nintendo wasn't very big at that time. You know, we all had Mega Drives and stuff. And, I mean, did you notice with any reviews that the UK was slightly lower than America or anything like that?
No, actually, I think that it looked to us like the UK and the Americas were the places where the game sold the best, but UK was up there as well. I think Germany was up there pretty high as well. So I didn't actually realize that you guys never really got the Metroid games back in the day. But it seemed to be pretty well. Guacamelee seemed to be pretty well received over in the UK.
When I was doing some research ages ago about retro stuff, I remember reading the Sega Master System sold 12 million consoles in Europe, and the Nintendo NES only sold 4 million.
Oh, wow.
You know, whereas I think in America, I think the NES had 95% sort of domination.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd never actually thought about that before. That's an interesting idea, or, kind of historical little factoid.
Because I know when the SNES sort of came out, that's when Nintendo became quite big in the UK.
Okay.
But,
and I guess Metroidvania's games started to become popular around that time too, I guess, with Super Metroid, and then on the PlayStation there was the Castlevania Symphony of the Night. Yeah. And those were like the two really big ones that kind of picked the genre up. And since then there have been a few good ones, but those are still like two really big notable ones from the early days.
Nintendo themselves, I mean, would you consider yourselves inspired by Nintendo? You know, like the older sort of game design?
Oh, yeah, definitely. In fact, in Guacamelee, we do some throwbacks to quite a few original Nintendo just little gameplay segments or snippets. There's like a sequence where we're kind of making fun of the way that you kill Bowser in the original Nintendo Super Mario games, and that we definitely draw inspiration from those games, because those are the games that got us to love games and get into games in the first place. So they always hold like a very fond place in our hearts.
So with Severed then, what was the inspiration for its art style and the world that you play?
Well, with regards to the art style, that really is dictated by our team. We only have a few artists. We're a small team, and so they have a style that they just tend to use, right? It's sort of their natural style, and I think the art that we have for all our games is really based on that. It's dictated by that. As far as the world, it was proposed during a game jam, I guess. Not that I guess it was. So we had a game jam a few years ago internally, and Severed was one of the ideas that was proposed, and yeah, we kind of just went with it.
So I guess, why make it only for the Vita?
Well, we've been working with Sony since the day we started the studio. All of our games have launched on Sony platforms first, and we have a really good working relationship with them. And we also knew that the game was going to be it was going to require touch-based combat, And also the way that you walk around in the world is we could have done it with touch, but it feels more natural to be using like the thumbsticks on the controller to do that. So the Vita is kind of a cross between those two. It has a touch screen, it has thumbsticks, so it felt really natural to put it on the Vita.
And was it actually hard to actually get the engine optimized to run on the Vita?
No, actually, the first time that we got a game running on the Vita was Mutant Blob's Attack, which was a launch title for the Vita. And we had made our first game was called About a Blob, and it was on PS3. And the first step that we did to try and get our engine running on the Vita was just to port About a Blob over to the Vita. And it only took our tech lead, it took him like less than a week to get the engine running on the Vita. And then a couple more weeks to optimize everything. But it wasn't really difficult to bring a game from PlayStation 3 to the Vita. And our engine has just been running on there ever since. So, I mean, the only thing that ever has to be taken into account now for us is just because the Vita has limited performance, it obviously doesn't perform as well as like the PlayStation 4. So we just have to be careful about not going too crazy with features in the game that will push the Vita too hard. But so far, that's never been a problem for us. Our games are simple enough and they're not like fully 3D, so we never really have to worry too much about performance.
Do you actually think the game will eventually come over to maybe the Android store, the iOS, and maybe home consoles?
I mean, for us at the moment, we kind of have to go baby steps. So for us, the full focus is just getting the game working on the PS Vita, and it's obviously working because we're going to release. So I think it's just focusing on that platform. It really comes down to just how the game is received, right? It has to make sense to bring it to other platforms if we do down the road. So I think it's to answer that question, it's kind of hard at this point. I think we just have to wait and see, performance-wise with regards to sales and see if that's something that makes sense, right?
Why did you actually want to make a touch-controlled game? Was it to prove that you could actually make a good one?
Yeah,
a little bit of that. We really wanted to do something completely different, and when the idea, like Chris was saying, when we tried with the Game Jam, we weren't using a touch at that time. We were using a mouse on a PC during the Game Jam, but we could tell naturally it's going to fit using a touch screen.
And just to add on, I mean, as we started the project and we started looking at other games that were trying to do something similar, we were pretty surprised at the lack of games, touch games specifically, especially on the iOS market and the Android market, that don't use touch, don't use gesture on the screen to actually be part of the fighting mechanics or just the gameplay mechanics. Usually touch games are you're just touching the screen, right? You're just touching objects. And for what Severed's doing is that it actually matters where you swipe on the screen. It matters where you swipe to get a proper parry, or it matters where you swipe to enable yourself to get to that vulnerable spot on an enemy. And I think we were really surprised that people haven't explored that space and explored that mechanic. So for us, that was an attractive idea or attractive challenge to take on.
I don't know about you guys, but normally when I've download a mobile game, it's something that I play with for 5 minutes and I just delete it. But I mean, lately, I don't know if you guys have played it or not, but Clash Royale.
Haven't played it, but some people around the office are playing it.
Oh my god, I'm so addicted to it. It's so good.
Yeah, I mean, look, those guys, that team knows what they're doing, right? I mean, with Clash of Clans, it's the same group, right? Yeah. They know the secret recipe. But they also have 300 people, and probably 100 of them are looking at analytics, and they're probably all have PhDs in psychology and know exactly how to bring people in.
You're being manipulated, David. That's what we're saying.
I've never played Clash of Clans.
I used to play Clash of Clans, so at least I'm a recovering Clash of Clans.
I think these people they tend to look into what makes gambling appealing to some people, and they try and hook into those same kind of things in the human DNA. Like there's something about certain things that they do in those games that really keep you coming back. Like they really get you addicted, and it's a mystery to me, but it's amazing to see.
And now we're tangenting here, but I would also say that their teams are so big that they can make the UI, so the most perfect UI, right? It's so refined.
It's so smooth.
It's so smooth that everything is so polished to a degree that no one else can, because no one else is a team like that. And so I give them credit in that regards.
Yeah, I think they've just got the whole layout of the screen perfect. Nothing's where it shouldn't be.
Yeah.
Anyway.
But people shouldn't be playing that. They should be buying Severed on April 26th.
Going back then, the game, it looks to be a bit more serious. Will there be as much of the pop internet reference as Guacamelee had?
No. We really tried to do something completely different, just so that we could, stretch different creative muscles. And there's no memes or pop references at all. There's no silly jokes. There are some weird characters that are humorous, but it's not the same kind of toilet humor that Guacamelee had a bit of.
Yeah, but that just has me thinking, though. We could make a DLC pack that integrates itself into the game and adds memes and, just memes, let's say, throughout the game. That might be an interesting DLC pack.
Yeah, because that's what people want, right?
Yeah, people want more memes, I believe.
And I mean...
David, did we lose you?
I was just it sounds like you were just people walking into the office or something.
Oh yeah, sorry. It's people outside of the room.
That's alright.
You're loud.
So, the only people I ever hear talking about the Vita is actually Colin Moriarty and Greg Miller. Now, it must be great to have such a massive show actually talk about your game for the last 2 or 3 weeks. I mean, do you think they'll help sales?
Oh, I think so. Yeah, I think those guys are really great, and they're doing a lot for the PlayStation brand, and I guess also especially the Vita. But there's a few places I feel like there are some really strong Vita supporters out there, and those guys they're kind of leading the charge. But even on Reddit, you see a lot of people that are really vocal about their support for the Vita. People don't want to let the Vita die. I'm one of those people, actually, because I think it's a fantastic platform, and it's a shame that it didn't pick up more than it did. So the people who have Vitas and love them, they really are champions for the Vita still. And I think Greg and Colin are kind of at the front of that charge.
Now, I mean, when the Vita came out a few years ago, I wanted it for 2 games. Now, I'm going to be very English here. There was Football Manager. And then I worked out that it was the exact same game that they released on the iOS.
Okay.
And it was either 30 quid for the Vita or $6.99 on the iOS. And it was like, yeah, I'll just get the iOS version.
Yeah, or you could get the Vita version and support the Vita.
And I mean, the other game was FIFA. And for some reason, I think the sticks, they were just in the wrong position for my hands, and it gave me a hand cramp.
Oh, no.
So I just decided, I don't need one.
I don't need the hand cramps.
Yeah.
Well, it depends on the types of games you like to play as well, I think, because the Vita has a lot of games. Some people call it like the indie portable device, because there's a lot of indie games that are brought over to it. And I know those are the games that I really like to play. So, like Axiom Verge was just released last week on the Vita. So they're still getting really great games. And if they're the types of games you like to play, then it makes sense for you to want to have a Vita. But if they're not, I can see the other side as well.
I mean, I don't know what you guys think, but I mean, I remember back in the late 80s, they had the Nintendo seal of quality. Do you think that Sony and Microsoft should do something like that? Because just last week or the week before, there was a game that came out on the PSN, is it Myco Mall or something?
I have no idea.
It's basically, I think it was a failed mobile game that they just quickly cobbled together and put it on the PlayStation Store. And it's one of the worst games I've ever seen. Okay,
that's pretty weird. I've never heard that before. But I do think that working with Sony for the last 8 years, they do pretty heavily curate the games that are invited to be on the platform. And then there's also technical certification requirements that you have to pass before they'll allow you to launch your game. So there's definitely quality control there, because they make sure your game doesn't crash. They make sure that your game follows this list of several hundred rules. So just to give the end users a good experience, and that's not something that Apple does or Steam does. So it does seem like Sony and Microsoft have more heavy curation and more quality control than the other platforms. So I'm not sure about this specific example that you just mentioned, though.
The game itself, I believe it's $15. I don't work in dollars.
Yes, that is correct.
Yeah.
So why did you settle on 15? Why didn't you do what a lot of people are doing now and try to go for 20 or a little bit more?
Well, we're not greedy.
Funny.
I think we looked at the game. It's about the same length as Guacamelee. It felt a little bit wrong to charge more than Guacamelee because of that. So we decided to just to go with the same price as Guacamelee.
Right. So is there anything else that you'd like to mention about the game that we haven't covered?
Well, we can talk a little bit more about like how the game works, because there are some interesting things in there that you wouldn't find in other games. First, to talk a little bit more about the game's combat. In the game, you play this young woman who she wakes up in the desert and she's missing an arm, and her main quest is to go off and try and find out what happened. She's looking for her missing family members, and throughout. So, as Chris mentioned, throughout the game, you're meeting these monsters, and you're using the touchscreen to fight them. So basically, your finger is kind of like your sword. And the enemies, there's a lot of different enemy types, and every time you're presented with a new enemy, you have to experiment and try and figure out what is this enemy's weaknesses, how do I defend against this enemy. And then quickly, early on in the game, we start to drop multiple enemies around you. So if you're familiar with touch-based sword games like Infinity Blade is kind of like similar, it has a similar feeling using a touchscreen for sword, but in Severed, you're not on rails like you are in Infinity Blade. It's like an open world that you can go around and explore anywhere. And also, during combat, we drop in multiple enemies around you. So it's kind of like it's almost like a Bruce Lee style fight where like enemies are coming in one at a time, and you have to defend them in certain orders. At the bottom of the screen, you can see all the enemies that are around you, and you can see which one is going to attack next, which one is the most immediate threat. So you can spin your attention to one of them, deal with him, then spin back to another one. There's a lot of strategy in like the order that you want to take enemies out, because some enemies are more difficult to take out than others. And then if you fight well, at the end of each battle, you have an opportunity to cut off the limbs of your enemies, and you collect those limbs, and they're kind of used as currency to upgrade yourself. And then it's kind of similar back to the Metroidvania question you were asking earlier. And also kind of in the vein of old games like Mega Man, when you reach the bosses in Severed, they usually have special abilities that they use against you during the fight. And when you kill them and cut them up, they leave behind a carcass that you put on yourself. It's like a piece of equipment, and you gain the power that enemy was using against you. So similar to how Mega Man, every time you beat a boss, you get a new power. In Severed, it's the same kind of thing. But also the powers in Severed that you get from the bosses, they open up to new parts of the world for you to explore. So there's also this Metroidvania aspect where you're getting new powers that open up new parts of the world as you're exploring through the game. And then on the exploration side, it is a first-person dungeon crawler, but we tried to push things like much farther than we've seen other games push them. Like there's a lot of environmental secrets that you're using to solve puzzles and find upgrades for yourself. And I don't know, that side of the game is also pretty interesting, I think. So that's kind of Severed in a nutshell.
I mean, I will just say thank you guys for coming on. It's been absolute pleasure.
Yeah. It's been, it's been good.
If you just want to tell the listeners how they can get hold of the game.
So check the Sony PlayStation Store on Tuesday, April 26th on your PlayStation Vita, and you'll be able to download the game then.
And if you want to give any links to any of your social media so that they can, like, fans can contact you or the team.
Yes, everyone should follow us on Twitter, which is at Drinkbox Studios. And if you want to check out more about the game, you can go to our website, which is severedgame.com. Or you can always go to our main website for the company, which is drinkboxstudios.com. And we have a blog there, and we just talk about the ongoings of the studio and give little updates.
Thank you, guys. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah,
thank you,
thanks a lot, David.
Hey, guys. Justin here. I just wanted to say that I've been thinking about you. I've been thinking about you a lot. Yes, you in particular. In that way. And I wanted to say, I think you're great. I've always said that about you. And I was wondering, if you think we're great, if you could give us a quick rating on iTunes, we'd really appreciate it. It would really, really help us out in that, podcasty sort of way. And if you're feeling particularly festive, perhaps even a little saucy, maybe stop by our Patreon page at www.patreon.com/OUG and see if you can't slip a few bucks our way. After all, every little penny or whatever space money they use in Europe helps out the show. Thanks for listening. OUG Gaming will always be free, but with your support, we can always move forward and always be better.